Hi, my name's Joe, and you already know my beautiful bride Leslie. She does the nice fine things. I'm the one that does the brute force. What happens, what's the thumbs up? Oh, thumbs up, alright. We have here a piece of plywood that I have to cut up. You'll see the picture of it sitting on sawhorses, and you'll know that I can't cut the plywood without cutting into the sawhorses. So that makes it kind of difficult. All the wood that you see up here on top is so I can make a sacrificial frame so I can cut the plywood without cutting my sawhorse. This is the plywood that eventually I'm going to be cutting. These 4 pieces of wood right here, the 4 2x4s, will be made into a sacrificial cutting table so I can cut the plywood without damaging my sawhorses underneath. For doing this project, I need to clamp these pieces together to saw them. I need clamps, so I have 2 different styles of clamps. I have what is called a bar clamp, and I have what is called a parallel jaw clamp. I could use, if I had a number of these, I could use all of this. I could use all of these. So I'm using them because I have some of each. But you could use any of these. I have here the tools that I'll use to mark where I'm going to cut. One is a combination square, just a plain tape measure, and I also like this a lot, this type of a measuring device. So I have 3 measuring and marking devices, and of course my trusty pencil. Once I make the marks, I'm going to be making the cuts with my trusty skill saw. Oh, this is a decal that came with my new saw that you can see the skill saw people have been in business since when? 1924. When you buy lumber at the lumber store and you order 2x4s 8 feet long, they are not 8 feet long. This one happens to be 8 feet and a little over a ½ inch. As you can see, the 8-foot mark is here, and as my beautiful bride would say, it's the real long hoochie and halfway to the next hoochie. I'll tell you that it's 8 foot and 19, 30 seconds. So you can see they're not really just 8 feet. In this case, I don't care. I'll show you how we're going to work around it. Now I'm running the tape out on the second 2x4 and making the measurement. Okay, remember the measurement from the first 2x4. This one is 8 foot, but it's the first shortest long hoochie, and then one of the really short hoochies, which makes it 8 foot and 5/16 of an inch, so it's less. I'll show you how we're going to compensate for that. I'm not going to cut the end off of any of these. Alright, I'm going to be putting all this together so I can start marking it. I bring the 2 2x4s over together and get them even, and then I get the ends even. I take my combination square, put it on the end of the first one, and I slide the second one until it touches so that both of the ends are more or less even. I'm holding it with my left hand, and I get the bar clamp, and I'm going to put it right here on the end. Now this holds it so that they don't slide back and forth. I'm going to measure from this end, mark my beginning notch. I'm going to go to the far side and mark my ending notch, and then I have to figure out where to put the 2 so they're evenly spaced in the middle, which will require some arithmetic, which I'll show you. I'm going to start by marking these boards so I know which one is my first one. This is number 1, and this is number 2. This allows me to keep track of everything and keep it in order. From this end, I'm going to start and mark 12 inches. Okay, this is where my notch is going to start. My notch has to be wide enough to accept the 2x4, and the 2x4 is just a shade over 1.5 inches wide. So this notch has to be 1, 1.5, and 1 hoochie. So I'm making it 1 9/16 of an inch wide. Okay, I'm at the other end. I'm going to make the marks for the last notch. As I came in 12 inches from that end, I'm going to come in 12 inches more or less from this end, so this mark will start at the 7 foot or the 84-inch mark, and that's where I make my first mark. And then I come over to I come back towards that direction, 1 inch, 1/2, and 1/16 to make it 1 9/16 for the notch. I'm going to put a clamp on it, and you have to adjust these parallel jaw clamps. I'm going to put a clamp on this so I can take out this bow. Makes it easier to mark. Okay, now we are ready to start marking. I'm making my first mark across the pieces, and I slide down to my second mark, and I draw my line. Now, always mark the part you want to remove with an X. This part's coming out, so I mark that so that I know that I'm cutting to this side of the line and on this side of this line. I put my square on there and make sure that these two pieces are level at this point, because my notch is going to be cut, and if they're not level, my notch will be different. I make my first line. I move over to the other notch, the other mark. I make my second line, and again, those are the places that I'm taking out. All right, my first notch was 12 inches in, and this notch is 84 inches in. So 12 from 84 is 72 inches. That's the space between the outside of this notch to the outside of the other notch on the other end. 72 inches, I have to put 2 places between them, so I have to divide 72 by 3. So dividing 72 by 3 gives me 2, so that's 1 remainder, and 2 is 6, 12, 3 goes into 12 4 times, so 24 inches. Now if I were going to do this precise, I would have to do a little more calculating, but this is close enough. What I'm going to do is from this line right here, I'm going to go down 24 inches and make a mark, and then 1 9/16 and make another mark. Then I'm going from that end and I'm coming back this way and do the same thing. Okay, I come down here and make my mark at 36 inches, and then I go 1 9/16 and make a mark right there. There's my third notch. Now we'll keep on going down to the 60-inch mark, and I will make a mark at the 60 inch. I will come back to my right to the 1 9/16, and there's where my fourth notch will go. Now, same thing we did on the first two. Take the square, mark, there, mark.
You gonna X out those?
Oh yeah. Again, mark out. Come down here, this will be the last notch. Sometimes you have to remeasure, make sure. Yep. Measure twice, cut just once. And then you never have to say, well, I cut it off twice and it's still too short. Now I have to mark the depth that I have to cut that notch. I have to cut halfway through the 3.5 inch side of the 2x4. Now it's time for a math. Now I have to find the center of the 2x4, which isn't 4 inches, it's really 3.5. So I have to find the center of that so I know how far down to cut the notch. Now you can do it a lot of different ways, but I cheat. Half of 3 inches is 1.5 inches. Half of a 1/2 inch is 1/4 of an inch. Add those together, you get 1 3/4 of an inch, and that's how deep you need to make the notch. You can see the flies that are flying around here. This is treated lumber, and the flies love it for some reason. I'm going to set my combination square and use it as a marking guide. This is the 1 3/4 inch mark that would have been the center. This is 1/16 of an inch less. I'm going to put this face of my combination square right on that 1 11/16 of an inch. So I loosen the center screw and I slide it over.
Wait a minute.
There's the 3/4.
Wait a minute. Crap, this is... Okay.
There's the 3/4 inch mark, and I slide it just a shade more, and there is the 11/16. I tighten the center screw down, and now it's on 1 11/16. This is the second notch. You have your depth gauge set, you don't change it. You mark the depth of the second notch. You can leave this set till you mark all 4 on both sides of the notches. You mark the depth. Now that's the marking of the depth of the second notch. Now I've made all my marks on the face side. Now I have to mark the reverse side. So I turn it over. Same thing. The depth of the last notch. Okay. Now I still need to put lines in up and down. I can change my square so that it's longer. I connect this line down here and I draw this line. That's my cut line. And I do the same thing over here. This is the part that's coming out.
Okay.
Now I continue to do that all the way down. This is the second notch on the back side. Now I have to turn it over and mark the other side, working back towards the start. This marks the one side, and this is the last vertical line, and then there's the X for the part that I'm going to remove. Okay, we're all ready to notch these pieces. The next thing I have to do, since I'm going to set my saw to cut at this 1 9/16 depth, before I actually start cutting these notches, I have 2 2x4s that I have to mark, and I have to cut them in half. So we're going to do that next. Okay, I need to cut these 2x4s at 48 inches. So I mark each one from the end at 48 inches. And then I use my trusty combination square to make my mark. And where before I made an X, I put a V like this, which means I'm cutting to that side of the line. Okay, again, like the X is the part that I want to remove, what I need to do is to make a V on this side of the line, which means I'm cutting on this side of the line. Power tools like this skill saw can be very dangerous. So proper etiquette must be observed when you make cuts. I'm going to cut this piece off at the line, but as you can see here, it's rather precariously balanced. What I'm going to do is make sure that this piece is properly secured to my table, which happens to be the piece of plywood that we're going to cut later, but I'm securing it with a clamp. Now the 2x4 is held in place and I only have to worry about the end that I cut off. Okay. It makes a bit of a noise and it will remove fingers just like that. So keep your fingers away from the moving blade. I'm going to line up the saw. Using a skill saw, the cuts are never precise. They're never going to be as precise as using a compound miter saw to cut with. But you still want to be as close as possible to the line. This notch says 0 degrees. That refers to the blade being straight up and down. Is going to run right on the cut side of that line. Okay, I'm going to put my saw up here and get it close. I put my combination square against it, and that will give me a guide for a straight, nice straight cut. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Okay, I'm going to cut the second one. I'm going to get ready, set up to cut these notches.
Okay. Oh.
I've got to go get another. Would you go get me another clamp?
Yes.
I have them all securely clamped together, and I'm going to clamp it to the plywood so that it can't get away from me. Whenever you're doing a measurement around a blade like this, always unplug the saw. Okay, I got to release my depth gauge on my saw, and remember our 1 9/16. It's that little hoochie right there. That's the depth I have to set the saw to. Okay, I set this up and I move the blade up and down until to that tooth I get it set right on the 1 9/16, which is right there. Can you see it's right on that mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay. We are now ready to cut our notches. I'm going to cut the first notch. Here we go. Gotta measure that, see how deep it is.
Right. Okay.
1 9/16. All right, I have to cut the other side of the notch. Now we have to remove these. There's lots of ways we can do it. One of the things that I do not have in my possession is a wood chisel. but I have a saw blade. I still have to finish cutting out the little pieces. It's a little tight. These do not need to be tight. So I need to take off just a hair more on this side. Okay, that'll work. Now I have to cut 3 more. When you're doing this, always wear the safety glasses because this throws chips of wood at you.